Is it just on YouTube? Oh, it's on YouTube. If it works now? Okay, great. Hey everybody, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of WIP Wednesday. This is WIP Wednesday number 14. Yep, and I'm coming to you from my home studio here in North Central Florida. Sorry that we had some technical issues with the audio there, a couple seconds. Now hopefully it's back on. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. Great, I see a lot of thumbs ups and y'all can see me and hear me now. Awesome. So I was saying welcome to another episode of WIP Wednesday. Today I'm working on some little pop-out pouches and kind of when I start doing these WIP Wednesdays here, if you're new to my channel, I do a lot of video tutorials and video courses. And so on WIP Wednesday, it's WIP that stands for work in progress. And I just share something that I'm currently working on with y'all. And so today I'm working on these super cute little pop-out pouches for a very specific reason. I have a bunch of these already, but I wanted to make some more to give as gifts during the holidays for sure. They're great little pouches. They use this fun hardware where you just press in on the sides and then it shuts, kind of like the slap bracelets from back in the day. Like that. And we carry the hardware in our online shop in 2 different sizes. So I'll share a couple samples once we get into the demo. But I'm making them because one of my cousins reached out to me this week and she texted me and said, hey, I want to learn how to knit and crochet. And I started watching your videos, and so I was like, she was asking for like a beginner kit, and I was like, I will put together the beginner kit for you. So I pulled a bunch of yarn and hooks and needles and stuff from my stash to send her, and so I also wanted to go ahead and put together a little notions pouch for her here. Stitch markers, a little tiny pair of scissors, some darning needles and stuff like that. So I'm going to be working on a couple of these today. I made a sample one because I was playing around with using a sturdier interfacing. Okay, so we'll start off first by saying I have a free tutorial for these pouches already on my YouTube channel. If you're not aware or not familiar with my channel, it's called The Crafty Gemini, and I have, I think, almost 600 video tutorials now. I've been posting videos on YouTube for, this week will be 11 years, right? 2009, yeah. So this week will be 11 years that I've been uploading videos to YouTube, so yay, Crafty Gemini. And I have a tutorial where I show you how to make this little pop-out pouch. You can see that it's a little bit, it's flatter than the little triangular tetrahedron shaped one that I'll be talking about today. But we have included, if you're watching on YouTube, in the video description box, links to where you can get the hardware, because we carry it in 2 sizes in our shop, where you can find links to the free video tutorials. One that I have like this that has, I don't have a sample of one with the embroidery, but I show you also how to do some machine embroidery, like a little monogram on the front of it. For those of you that have embroidery machines, super cute way to customize a very simple and inexpensive project to make. Then earlier this summer, I posted a video tutorial on how to make the little triangular shaped one or tetrahedron shaped one that I almost just dropped. But you can see how cute they are. Uses the same hardware. It's just the way that we sew the seams is slightly different. And you can see that in this one, I have a bunch of my little plastic sewing clips. So if you travel a lot or need it to be contained, instead of keeping your clips in a little open pouch like I do on my work table, this is going to be a great one for that too. Little kids can put their little treasures and toys and all that kind of stuff in these little pouches, all right? So let's go ahead and actually let me say hi now that the audio is all working and well. Great. Oh, Aretha says, I love those pop-out pouches. She says she puts her cell phone in them and she makes them to match her totes and wallets that she also makes. That is awesome. EJ says, great idea. I need a pouch for my many, many stitch markers. Absolutely agreed. I'm the same. I make stitch markers. I buy stitch markers, plastic, metal, cutesy ones. For my knitting stuff, I have to have them in all the sizes. Okay? All right. So, oh, thank you. Willow says, congrats on 11 years, and so does Sharon. Thank you all. I never really even thought about it, but it was like the first week of November that I started uploading videos. Wild. All right. So, let's see. Okay, let me just quickly pop over to Facebook and say hi to some friends there while I gather up all my stuff here. Thank you all for your patience. Whenever we have technical issues, it's always a hassle. Great. So this works for me. And then let's see. Hi, Addie from Virginia. Good. Sherry says I could definitely use those for sewing notions also. Remember was it last week or the week before that we had that So Fine thread gloss for sale? We're currently sold out, but we're waiting on another order. And I'll show you mine here. I kept one of the cotton candy ones because I want to use it for my projects. But this stuff is perfect. If you do a lot of hand sewing, or even when you're getting ready to bind a quilt, let's say, you have all your little hand sewing stuff in one of these little pouches, take it with you to the couch while you watch TV, you can sew, right? So the little tin of the thread gloss fits perfectly in here, a couple needles, your thimble, super cute little pouch. You can never, it's the same thing with zipper pouches, right? I just feel like you can never have too many little pouches to keep all your little knickknacks in. All right, so we're gonna get started. I am going to have B switch to this camera angle here so I can organize some of these pouches and share with you some demos real quick. And I think we're gonna try something different today, so you all let me know how it goes. Let me see, B. Yay! Oh, there I am. Okay, so let me know how y'all like this with a picture-in-picture. He's getting fancy on you. So here are, so this is the basic pouch, okay? You can see that it's flat and you can just fit it in. But if you use the links to access my free tutorials for this, remember, these are kind of ideas, right? A way that you can use the hardware for something cute. I used cork at the top of this one to finish it off. You can also make them longer. I don't have a tutorial for a longer one, so I didn't actually take measurements when I was making this prototype, but you can see, and this doesn't have like batting or anything, so it's just 2 layers of fabric, but you can see that if you quilt it, like this one, like I show in the videos, and you add some batting or something a little bit more protective in here, you can keep your eyeglasses, sunglasses, and you just pop them, take them out, boom. Right? So play around with the dimensions if you're just doing simple ones like this. Then the other tutorial that I did for y'all was for this one, okay? And for the exterior fabrics, we went ahead and used a fashion fuse, which is a cotton woven fusible interfacing, which is basically like adding almost a whole nother layer of the designer quality quilting cottons to the exterior, okay? So streamlined, super cute. This is the same way that I did this one. I mean, and they look little, right? This was done with the 4-inch hardware. So we carry the hardware in 4-inch lengths and in 4 3/4 inch lengths. So you can see this one is longer. Now we carry it in the online shop. We'll have links to it, but also they come 2 to a pack. All right, so if you buy one, you're getting 2 and 2 of the little pins, right? So you have everything you need to make 2 pouches from 1 pack. And this one only has 1 because I just used 1 for this one, okay? But look how little it is, and look how many clips I can store, and I still have room in here. That's a bunch, right? So I think they're great, great little pouches for storing all kinds of little things. You can put, what else? Masks in here. You can put, I mean, in the bigger ones, and I'll show you this size. So this is one that I made with the 4.75-inch hardware. Okay, so longer hardware, longer or bigger pieces of fabric. And if you're wondering for the dimensions on both of these, I have them in the page where I teach you how to do this. So that blog post link on my website, if you read through it, it has links to where to get the hardware, all the stuff I use, and then also tells you if you're using the 4-inch hardware, these are the cut pieces you need to cut, right? And if you're using the 4 3/4 inch pieces, these are the pieces that you need to cut. And I keep forgetting that I'm actually here too. I'm like talking down. All right, so we're gonna set these aside. You can see that they vary in size based on the hardware that you use. And of course, you can play around with the dimensions. But look, that's a good size pouch. All right, and then this is a smaller one. So for this one, I'm going to be using, the next one I made a sample here. I'm going to be using another interfacing. So I'm going to use Durafuse. And if you're in my bag clubs or you make a lot of stuff with my classes and stuff, you know that this is the interfacing I go to when I want a stiffer exterior, right, for my bags. So let's start off with the pieces that we'll need. I'm going to make another 4-inch one. Why not? Let me use the hardware that's in here. So I have some 5-inch by 5-inch square pieces of fabric here. And these were leftovers from the flash sale that we had last week for my charm tote. So I am going to, and if you notice, if you have pre-cut squares or you have a lot of scraps in your stash, just cut them down to 5 inches by 5 inches. And if you really want to add a little more texture, instead of doing them like this, where the same fabric is the whole exterior, notice here, because it's made up of 2 squares, I use 2 different purples. All right, and the way that it's constructed, it just gives it like another look. So you can have a scrappier look to your pouches. So I just think that's cute. So I'm gonna do a blue and a pink for the exterior, split just like that one. And then for the lining, you also need 2 more. So for the lining, let's just go a little bit more neutral. I think I'm gonna go with that and another grayish one, something like that. Why not? All right, so we have these 4. You need 2 for the exterior, 2 for the lining. Whoops, let me grab my stack because I do need something else. We need 2 little strips that are going to make up the casing up here for the actual hardware, and that needs to be cut to 2 and 4.5, 2 by 4.5. So let's see, if these are my exterior, which fabric do I want to be at the top in the casing? Let's get wild. Why not? Blue and pink make lavenderish purple. Let's do that. So remember that we do carry the hardware in both sizes. We are limited in stock on the little guys, on the 4-inch ones. So we do have more, I think, of the 4.75-inch ones, but they're all up-to-date inventory. So y'all can check that out and we'll have links to it. If you're not aware, we have an online shop where we sell a ton of stuff. Digital products, free PDF patterns, paid for stuff, and physical products. Fabric, we have interfacings, we have the hardware for these pouches, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to start off by cutting the pieces that are going to make the little casing at the top. Let me just cut this down. Okay, good. Apologies for the glare from the lights, but I'm just cutting 2 little 2-inch strips here, and then I'll cut them down. 2-inch. And then I'm going to trim a little bit off. So this way down to 4.5. And you'll need an iron for this project too. There's a lot of spots where you want to have nice creases and stuff like that. Okay, so 4.5, and then 1 more of these. And notice I'm using my 10-inch slicer ruler. For these small cuts, you don't have to grab like a big rectangle or a big square ruler. If you have my 10-inch slicer, it's not just used for the projects that I've shared tutorials on, making quilts and stuff like that. I also just use it as a regular cutting ruler. So that's another thing. And we did get them back in stock. I know a lot of you have been waiting on it. We did get more. So this is something else that we do have in the shop. All right, so let's prep these 2 little casing pieces first. I pulled out one of my older DIY mini ironing boards. That's a throwback tutorial. Let me grab my iron. Okay. So these, the little top casing strips, we're just going to turn it so that the wrong side of the fabric is facing up at me. And I'm going to turn under towards the wrong side, the 2 short edges of each by 1/4 inch. You can eyeball it, you can measure it. I just eyeball it. My iron's not hot yet. Just like this. Make sure. Try to keep this up. Yep, question. Feed me the questions. So is the hardware strong enough to open if they made it with leather? So if we have a look at the hardware, you can see I made this one with cork fabric. So that is a little bit sturdier, right? Closer to like a leather or a vinyl or faux leather. The way that it opens is based on the hinges on the ends. As long as you do something like this, where I left it raw on the cork because the cork fabric doesn't really fray, okay? If those hinges are open and available to be pressed like that, I don't see why not. Okay, it might be, I mean, and it's kind of depend on the leather that you're using, like how thick it is, how bulky it is. So I mean, you could definitely try a sample, and when you stitch it up, just use like basting stitches, really long straight stitches. That way you can just go through the steps and try it and see if it works, and if not, then you can just take it apart, right? I would say try it without locking in the pin that goes with the hardware and see. But this one was made with cork, which is the closest thing that I've used to making it with a proper leather, and it worked for mine. So I mean, those are the kind of things that you'd have to experiment with, because leather, faux leather, vinyl, cork even, they come in so many different weights. I don't have personal experience with it, so I would recommend that you definitely try it out first, like experiment and audition it. All right. So I'm doing the same thing to the other one. And then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch down these little short ends that we just turned over because I want that to stay down. And you want to stitch it close to the raw edge so that it doesn't lift up on you, okay? So I'm going to put this over here and grab this guy over here. I think I can move my ironing board out the way. What has everybody been working on this week? Leave me a comment. Let me know. I have been working on some crochet stuff, some knitting stuff. I'll give you all a little sneak peek. I posted a picture on my Facebook page this week. This is my new crochet dishcloth pattern that I'm going to be releasing soon. I did a little poll. A lot of you were asking for kits. I got messages of people saying I want to learn how to crochet. I do have a bunch of beginner crochet videos on my YouTube channel that I did years ago, but I will be working on a step-by-step video tutorial for this one too when I release the PDF. It's going to be a free PDF pattern and video tutorial. So I'm going to put together a little kit for people that, you know, want to have the right size hook and the right yarn and all that stuff. So we will have that available shortly. Yay! But I was super excited with that one. Such a simple project, but it like kicks you back in to like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I love crochet. I should do it more often. Let me plug myself up here at the sewing machine. All right. All right, so for stitching this down, I'm just going to do a basic straight stitch, and I'm going to lengthen it just a hair because I really don't need it to be such a tiny, like 2mm stitch. 2.6 will work for me, and I think we're okay there. And I'm doing it from the wrong side just because I want to stitch close to that raw edge. If you think about how this is going to come together, the hardware is going to be fed through this. Okay, and we don't want the metal parts of the hardware getting caught on this bit. So I'm trying to do it real close. That'll just save me a headache when I get to that step, and then it'll be too late to go back on it. All right, those two, repeat the same thing to these ones. And if you've been looking for the thread snips, we did restock these as well. We got them back in stock. They're my favorite little thread snips. I see a bunch of you this week have been snatching them up, I should say. Some people are buying like 4 and 5 at a time. They make great gifts, and those are the kind of things that you can have like at every sewing machine, at every station. Put one in like your retreat bag, or you know, when you travel or go to classes, then put one in your home stash. They're super, 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 super handy and sharp. Okay, so now that we have that, let's just give them a press, and we're going to fold them to make like the little casing. All right, so like this. I'm going to grab my iron and just give them a press in place. The next step is to prep the exterior panels. And so I mentioned earlier that I'm working with a different interfacing this time because I wanted something a little bit stiffer. It's not super thick, right? We're not talking like a Pellon Peltex heavyweight interfacing. Let me not put that down. We are working with Durafuse, and this is a crisp, non-woven, medium weight fusible interfacing. So a lot of words, but once you start working with some of these and you use them in one project, then you'll know, okay, that interfacing that I used for that one project might work again in this one. And it's kind of like the same thing with fabric. Look at how big this piece is. So we sell these in a special cut. I believe they're 60 inches by 36. Do you think that's right, Brandon? Yes, so 60 by 36, it's huge. I mean, I made a pouch already, and look at the only little bit that I used, all right? So I'm going to take my 2 exterior 5-inch by 5-inch squares. I'm just going to place them on here kind of as a template guide to rough cut myself a little bit. This doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just rough cutting it for now. Then I can get the rest of the interfacing out of my way. I'll just throw that there. And now let's grab the ironing board and the iron. And what you want to check is that the wrong side of your fabric squares is touching the shinier side of the Durafuse. I don't know if we can see that there on camera, but you see that sheen to it versus this side that is more matte? The shiny side is the side that has a really thin film of adhesive, okay? So that's what I want to fuse to the back of my fabric. So I'm just going to do them like this. Hit it with a hot, dry iron. I am going to spritz it with some water. You can always read the manufacturer's instructions for what they recommend for the different interfacings that you use. But I'm just going to tack it down first so it doesn't move on me after I try to come back and fuse it well. All right. And then I'll hit it with a little mist of water just to create a little bit of a steam here and help the fabric adhere to the interfacing a little bit better. Oh, and it makes the fabric so crisp. I love it. If you work on like wallets, handbags, even exterior pockets where you want it to just have like a crisp, clean finish and you're wanting to use a quilting cotton, this stuff is the bomb. All right. And then like I always say with any fusible interfacing, I don't start handling it right after I take off the heat of the iron. The adhesive is still hot and kind of in a melted state. So I just let it sit for a little bit while that cools before I start handling it, okay? Let's see. Woo, we got a lot of people on here today. Awesome. Let's see. Ooh, Barb says she's working on her Helene cardigan today. How fun. All right, I wanted to make a bag. Let me see. Hold on. Doll Baby says she's been working on a zippered purse. Oh, so y'all are I forgot that I asked that question and was asking y'all what you have been working on. Bernadine says, hi, Miss Bernadine. She says she's working on fleece hats, scarves, quilt blocks, and face masks. Girl, you are busy, busy over there in Louisiana. All right. Gloria says she's redoing her basement into a sewing area so she can have everything in one spot. I love that. Have fun and congrats on that. All right. Let's see. Any other specific questions here? Darlene says, OMG, girl, now I need to make some of these for Christmas too. You're killing me. All the projects, add them to your list, right? All right, so now I'm going to separate these two down the middle. And then here I have a little bit of interfacing still sticking out. So I'm just going to trim it up. And you don't have to be super perfect with this. It's still going to work. All right, so we have two exteriors. We have the two casings. Let's go ahead and sew these guys to these ones. So to center them up, and let me just make sure my shot is decent there. Okay. To center them up, the quickest and easiest way, instead of trying to take measurements and then dividing by 2 and all that, just decide on the fabric itself. Remember, this is going to be the exterior. And so this is hanging down from where we're going to install the casing. So if you're working with a directional print, meaning something that has text or a character or something that you want to read like up and down, say you have little elephants, you don't want them to be upside down on your pouch, line them up so that it's reading correctly in this way so that when we attach the casing, you know that the casing is going to be at the top, if that makes sense. All right? So think about that step there if you're working with directional prints. Then I just decide, okay, this is going to be the top edge. I fold it in half, give it a little crease at the top, then take the little casing piece and fold it in half, and then scratch it right there with your nail too to crease it. And when you line up one crease on top of the other, that means the center of that one is now centered on the other one and you're good to go. So that's a super quick and easy way to center your pieces on any project really that you're working on. Instead of like trying to measure this, trying to measure that and comparing. All right, we'll do the same thing here. Can y'all hear my roosters? I wonder sometimes if my mic picks up the roosters that are behind me out there. The chicken coop is right out there. One of them is at least. All right, so then I'm lining up these two together. And I'm just putting this here. All right, now we're going to baste these in place. And that just means we are going to stitch them to hold them together as one layer, right? Before we get to the lining pieces. And for this, I just like to use like a really scant 1/4 inch, like an 1/8 of an inch or a little bit bigger. Sometimes I'm hesitant to say an 1/8 of an inch because some people are like, where even is that on the sewing machine? Like, how in the world am I supposed to find that guide? So just close to the edge. Let's say that. Okay, we're good there. Grab my foot pedal. And again, this is just a straight stitch, and I call it basting, but it's not a basting that we're actually going to take out like you would hear in garment sewing. You know, they say hand baste or use a long stitch and baste this and then later steps in the construction process, you'll hear or you'll see in the instructions, it tells you remove the basting stitches. We're not going to remove these. This is just, I'm combining the two, the casing to the exterior, so that I have one less layer flapping about when I get to the step of adding the lining. All right, so I'm just stitching close to the edge here. And when I say close, I mean close, y'all. Some people, you know, you tell them close and they sew like 3/8 of an inch. So it's important to note what these measurements look like, okay, in real life, like right on the line, not over the line. I mean, 1/8, 1/16 of an inch sometimes when we're dealing with these really narrow seam allowances can make a huge difference. In our case, although this is a simple little project, you got to remember that the casing here is what's going to hold the hardware. So if you baste at a wide stitch and then when we go to sew the lining in place, you sew even wider, you're going to be narrowing out this casing to the point where your hardware probably won't even fit there. Okay, so we'll go through that in a second, where I will audition, so to speak, the hardware to make sure before we get further along, because by the time you install the hardware, it's too late to start going back. I mean, at least for me, I would literally just throw it in the trash. If I sewed a big seam allowance and I couldn't go back, I would not bother taking it apart. It would take me less time to make a whole nother one. So I'm just saying, set yourself up for success, and, you know, stop and take those extra just like preliminary checkpoints to make sure everything is going in your favor. All right, we're here. Okay, so at this point, although we're not done with the seam here, I am going to audition the hardware just to make sure, right? I don't want to be like, oh no, even the basting stitch is way too big. Like, that would be an epic fail. But you could still save it at this point, right? Because you've only sewn one line of stitching. All right, so here's the hardware. And you don't even have to slip it in there. If you just place it on top, you can see, okay, I have plenty of room on both sides. So I know that my hardware will fit in there. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, you see how that works? So I'm going to set this aside, and then let's grab our lining pieces. So the lining, we're going to place one on top of each one of these, pretty side to pretty side. And we're going to clip on this edge. So now basically the casing is sandwiched in between these two. All right, same thing on the other one. I love these kinds of little cutesy projects. Speaking of cutesy projects, stay tuned. This Friday, we'll be back with another flash sale, some announcements and stuff like that. So if you don't know, we go live every Wednesday at 1 here on Facebook and YouTube, and then on Friday nights as well at 7 p.m. All right, Eastern time for me. So let me see. I did an eighth. So here you can use like a chunky 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch, which on most of these like basic home sewing machines is usually the center needle position, and then following the edge of your foot as the guide. So I'm actually going to just bump mine a hair over. This is where you don't want to sew too big of a seam allowance, because then you will definitely block the hardware from fitting in the casing. But no worries, because this is only a simple row of stitching, and we'll audition the hardware again. Not that. We'll leave that. Wait. So my stitch length, I'm putting it to 2.4 in length for a straight stitch. And then for me, I'm going to move the needle over a couple bumps. Oop. And stitch width. So on most machines, if they give you an option to adjust your stitch length and width, if you select a straight stitch, then you can adjust the needle position by adjusting the width, because there is no width on a straight stitch, right? So when you adjust the width, the machine just goes bloop, 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 and bumps over the needle to the right or to the left as you're adjusting the width functions here, whether it's by a knob or if it's a computerized machine. All right, so I'm going to stitch this down. And I'm only stitching down across the top, okay? And then I'm back stitching at the beginning and end. All right. And as far as a sewing machine needle goes, I don't know if anybody has asked it yet, but because I'm working with the Durafuse, right, sometimes people would think, well, don't you have to use a bigger needle or something like that? It is a crisp interfacing, but it's not like a batting or a fusible fleece. So you don't have to use anything wild. I have an 80-12 universal needle, and I do, because I had a ballpoint jersey needle in here before we went live, so I had to stop and change it real quick. Okay, so now back to the iron. Okay, and I'm just going to give this a press. And if you're wondering why I would use an interfacing on the exterior and not on the lining, it's because for such a small compact project, if say you were to add Durafuse to the lining too, it's going to be crispy. I mean, this is going to be like a little fortune cookie of hard interfacing, okay? So I would, I don't even use the fusible or the woven fusible interfacing on the lining. The lining can just sit in there by itself. It's just the cotton fabric. It's kind of a small space inside, and it's just fine. You know, I would not really recommend actually using so many interfacings in such a small condensed little pouch. All right, so now that we have these two, ooh, these are cute together. So we are going to place one on top of the other. All right, pretty sides touching, and I'm putting exterior, and look how crisp that is with that Durafuse. I just love it. And it fuses really well. It's not like some fusible interfacings that you can use that wrinkle, you know, the fabric and stuff. Just give it a nice flat press and it lies super flat. Okay, so one on top of the other, pretty sides touching, interface sides on top, one on top of the other. The most important point here is the intersections here, where the side seams match. So I'm going to place clips at those first. Grab my little clip here. Same thing on the other side. Okay. And then I'm going to put some clips all the way along the two long edges, because that's the one seam that we're going to sew first. So we're not messing with these short ends yet. If you see any questions, let me know. Oh, the clips that I'm using? Oh, instead of pins. Okay, yeah. So these are plastic clips that almost every quilter has these days. Clover makes a brand called Wonder Clips, and they are just a way for us to clip layers of fabric together, right? So that you can move your stuff, take it to the sewing machine and all that without poking holes through your fabric. So because I sew garments, I love to use pins, all right? You could use pins here. If you were using any form of cotton fabric like I have, if you even quilted it like we did on this one, if you use the woven fusible interfacing like I show you how to do when we make this one, if you use the Durafuse, all these different options, you can use pins because it's not going to affect the finished project if you poke a hole through it with a pin. However, if you were to try making this out of a cork fabric or faux leather, vinyl, that kind of stuff, those are fabrics that are more specialty fabrics, right? And you got to have tools to work with them. You're not going to poke a hole. This would look super cute. Say you did a clear vinyl pouch. How cute would that be? That would be super cute because you could see all the clips through it. It would be fun. But you're not going to sit there and pin holes through clear vinyl because they're not going to go away, right? When you poke a hole through those fabrics, the hole stays. So that is where these clips come into play. So when you're working with fabrics that you can't poke holes in, definitely a plus to use your clips. And then also when you're working with multiple layers, if we have like 2 quilted layers that are coming together, or we're making a handbag that features foam interfacing and then lining that has woven interfacing fused to it, like all these layers come together, you'll be bending every single one of your fine glass head pins or whatever kind of pins you use, right? So in those cases also, the little clips come in handy because they chomp down and they hold all the layers really, really nicely together. So those are clips. And we used to have them in stock. We used to put them in some flash sales, but we are sold out right now, okay? But if we get some more in stock, I will let you all know. All right, so we're heading over to the sewing machine here. We're going to stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance just down both long edges. Make sure that you hit those intersecting points there. And I'm here telling y'all to do it, and I bet you that usually means I'm going to miss mine, but we'll try it anyways. All right, so just along the long edges and 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I know for me, let me bump there my needle position over for 1/4 inch. Back stitch at the beginning and ends. And you saw how quick I got started on this project because I used the 5-inch pre-cuts. If you have leftovers, This is a perfect little project, even if they're from a stack. So maybe you don't have doubles of the squares. You can do what I'm doing here and just feature multiple fabrics, both on the exterior and the lining. See, this is why you got to buy 4 or 5 of these clips, or these snips, because we lose them. All right, and then I'm going to flip it over, and same thing on the other side. And I'm trying to, like, it's a little tricky to talk and do stuff and then realize, oh no, you messed up, you forgot this step. And I'm trying to keep up with the steps in my head as well. Needle down, okay. Okay. Well, you know what I did? We forgot to check the hardware. Let's hope that it fits fine. I totally was supposed to audition my hardware 1 step ago, but we'll pretend. Okay, so here we have it. It's like a tube, right? So whereas to make this, and I'll just go over this real quick. To make this flat one, you would have sewn like left an opening at the bottom of the lining and sewn all the way around. To make the tetrahedron shaped one, we need to, instead of sewing this flat here, we're going to open it and make the 2 side seams touch and intersect in the center, okay? And then we stitch across, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. But the lining side, make sure you leave an opening, because we're going to have to flip this whole thing out on the lining side. So you can see it with that interfacing how crisp it is. So just, work with it. Okay, so I brought the side seams intersections to match in the center. On the interface side, I'm going to stitch straight across, 1/4 inch seam allowance. On the lining side, leave an opening of almost 3/4 of the way over if you're using this interfacing. If you use just the woven fusible interfacing, it's a lot more pliable, so you could potentially get away with a smaller opening here. I've already made one of these, and that's why I tested it out for y'all. You got to leave a big opening at the bottom here, otherwise you can't really flip out the stiffer interfaced side. Okay, so I'm going to do that where I'm just going to leave this here. I'm going to start at the bottom and just stitch like the last 1.5 inches, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and end. And on the lining side, I'm going to sew a slightly bigger seam allowance just to get that lining inside of the pouch to lie a little bit flatter. And that's another little bag making tip for you. Okay. So you sew a slightly bigger seam allowance on the lining side, but keep your regular seam allowance on the exterior side. So on this side, I'll still sew 1/4 inch. And I need to move my needle over for that. Okay. Okay, now let's trim off a little bit of bulk from our corners. So here, and I think you can see that, my seam goes here. I'm just going to shave a little bit off of the corners without cutting into my stitches. Okay. On the lining side as well. I'm just cutting a chunk off. Don't cut the seam allowance that's sticking out here in the opening side, because you'll need that extra fabric to tuck it under into the opening, okay? So now, I'm trying to think, did I miss a step? Did I ruin something? Did I do something backwards? No, I did good. So now I'm flipping everything right side out. And don't worry about crinkling it. That interfacing, because it is a crisp medium weight interfacing, it is more paper-like. And so it's going to have like some wrinkles in it as I fight with it to get it to turn out here. But you just give it a press and it just is right nice flat again. All right, so now, key thing, I put my fingers through the lining opening and push the exterior fabric all the way out, making sure I'm poking out all my corners, reducing bulk here. And just take a couple seconds, a couple minutes to poke out your corners. Okay, that's better. I like that. Blue, pink, and then purple on top. All right. So that is how the exterior will look. This is where my hardware will be installed. We're going to give it a good press in a second. Because see, that interfacing is wanting to push up the lining fabric. Since it's so crisp, you know, it's sticking up. So we would press all of this down and in. Same thing on this side. And even after I press it, then I would pull the lining out, you know, and stitch the opening shut. But I just want to kind of get everything in position so far. So cute. Okay. So now once, you know, all my corners are poked out on the exterior, then I can feel a little bit more confident about shutting the opening that I have in the lining. You don't want to close this lining hole up first because then you have no way of getting through to in between the layers to poke out the corners on the exterior. So I'm just tucking in the raw edges here, what I didn't sew on the lining portion, and just tuck on it on both ends, and you can see it just stays shut, and I just top stitch it. You can, of course, stitch this by hand, but ain't nobody got time for that. All right, so we're gonna do this just like that. Back stitch and top stitch it right here. And like I said, if you don't like it by machine, you know, the lining stitch by machine, just do it by hand. It's inside the little bag. Nobody's gonna see it either way. All right, so you can see how I did that. Nice and closed. Tuck it back in there. And now I put my fingers in the lining and I'm pushing it out here so that it lies as flat as possible on the inside. Also, with this interfacing, it's important to note the same way that we used some of the steam to mist it when we fused it to the fabric, it also helps with some of the wrinkles. Like it's wrinkles in the paper like interfacing because it's a non-woven interfacing. And so I just steam it, hit everything up, press it. So cute. And see, this was made up of what? 5 different little 5" by 5" square pieces of fabric. Yeah, we used almost a full one for the top casing, then 2 for the exterior, 2 for the lining. Okay, that's good. Now we are ready to install the hardware, and that's it. I love it. Super cute projects. If you do a lot of gift making or for craft fairs or for your little online shop or whatever you do, if you do stuff assembly line style, this is where it's at, you know, because you can sew a ton of these. Okay, so let me grab my hardware, and I'm going to use a 5" or the 4" one, excuse me. Okay, so we take the hardware, and instead of opening it all the way like this and trying to feed it through one side, this is what some people do. Like you'll have it in here and then you have to like mess with this and bend it to try and get it in. I don't do that. I will slightly open it like a V. And let me put something in here first to open up the casings because I pressed them so flat. I need to have them open on one end so that I can actually slip the ends in. But you open up your hardware and carefully slip it. You see how there's like these little things sticking out, all this metal stuff. It can be frustrating because it can get hung up on the edge. This is another reason I told you when we turned in the sides of the casing strips, stitch super close to the edge so you don't have any extra of that sticking up. Now another thing is I'm going to actually flip this because of the way that the hardware goes in. I want the tab that has like a little metal tab sticking up to be on top. That way I can drop the pin in and close it from the top. Otherwise, you could still install it like this. You would just flip under your pouch like this to install the pin and do it upside down. Either way, it'll work. Not a big deal. So I'm going to slip this in one side of the casing. And when I have like 1/4 inch of it in, right here, stop, and then also install it on the other side. So it's a lot easier to feed these two through here. Like that. Pop, pop, pop. So when you push through, it should come out close to the other side. If you need to pull back the fabric on it, it's no big deal. Sometimes, like I said, this one didn't get hung up on anything. I can see it. Some of the threads of the fabric of the raw edge can get caught up on the little metal pieces. So just work with it so that you can get access to the little barrel, basically, that's sticking out there. Okay, we need that one there. And then on the other side, the same thing. And so if you sew large seam allowances when you're stitching on the casing or basting it or whatever, you can see how this will end up being even tighter. All right, so I still have plenty of room to move these around. So I'm just going to hold back the fabric like this, and I have one little thread there that wants to hold me up. Okay, that looks good. So then let's grab the little metal pin that comes with your hardware. Do not open up these packages and just like throw them around. You know, there's these little teensy little pins. And if you order a pack, you should have 2 pieces of the metal hardware and 2 of the little pins. It's just literally like a little metal stick. So this gets put together like that. So I'll show you again here and here. Remember, I have step-by-step video tutorials on this with super close-ups and all that. And then at the top, I'm going to slip the pin in till it goes straight down. Make sure that all the barrels are aligned, otherwise the pin will not fit. So there they are aligned, 1, 2, 3. And then the top, you just need to turn it under. You can hit it with, if you have some needle nose pliers or you have a, what do you call it? It's like a screwdriver, a metal thing or whatever. I'm just going to hit it with this metal crochet hook. Just be careful you don't try to do it with your hand because it is a little chunk of metal that needs to be bent over. That basically then locks the little metal prong thing in the barrel, right, to hold it all and finish installing the hardware. So that's that. So there's the finished pouch. Of course, I will give this another press. By pressing it flat in certain directions, you know, you can create creases. Oops. But I'm like the ironing queen. I love pressing all this stuff flat. Okay. Give it a nice good press. That's another cool thing. Since it's metal, you can hit it with the iron. It's not going to make a big deal, or it's not a big deal. Okay, all my fabric looks good. Let me dry this bit. And that's my little finished pop-out hardware pouch. So cute. Isn't that cute? I kind of like the scrappy look with pink and then blue and then purple on top. So, so cute. Let's see. I love these kind of these little projects. Every time I look at them, I'm like, I love these little kinds of projects. Look at that. Cute. And so you can see it just, I mean, you can see it, but you can't really feel it. It just has a more substantial kind of like crispness to the shape when you use the Durafuse, but you can use a lot of different interfacings, right? So if you want a lighter weight one, you can go with the woven fusible interfacing like these guys, and then the Durafuse is just going to add a little bit more of a crisp hand to it. But again, it's still not that much more to throw it off. Like it's not a big chunky fluffy fleece or batting or anything like that. Super cute. All right, so we have a free step-by-step video tutorial for that if you weren't catching the whole thing or didn't catch the full demo today, or if you know, you want to slow down. We also have that. Let me grab my phone and see if I have any questions that I can answer here. Did you see any that I need to reference? All right. Oh, good. Jane says she loves the pick and pick, B. Awesome. Thank you. I know part of the time if I'm working, I'm like looking down. So I'll get better as I remember that there is a picture-in-picture and I can pop my head up to look at y'all. Hi, Judy. She says, aloha from Hawaii. Love your videos. Awesome. So Terry P says, if the hardware doesn't fit, can you run thin ribbon or cord through and make it a mini drawstring pouch? Absolutely. Just remember to do 2. Right? Because you know how the mini drawstrings work. You got to do like a backwards letter C with some type of a ribbon or something, and then the forward facing letter C so that they interlock when you pull them. But yeah, you can totally do that. That would be super cute too. Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, good. Maureen says she's cute. She likes the use of the different fabric for the 2 outside pieces. Oh, she was saying the iron was too close to the plastic bag. Thank you for that. Oh, I know. This is me. This is the iron and this is me. Just asking for trouble. Like what I tell my kids not to do, and that's me. I'm a little bit tight here on space, y'all, but if I get a little roller cart with a little ironing mat on top, then that would be kind of cool. I should set something like that up. All right, awesome. Can you wash the bag with the hardware inside? I wouldn't because the the band, that flexible metal, I can see that definitely like getting rusted and maybe ruining your fabric. You can. So you can take it out the same way that we press the little cap down. You can go carefully, right, with like a little screwdriver, or I would say a little flathead screwdriver at first to like get under there and just to kind of lift it up, and then take your pliers and just pop it up, and you can pop the pin out, you know, and then take it out, and you could wash it like that. For me, I feel like I can make another one faster. That's just how I roll. But yes, yes. Physically, it is possible. You can totally do it. I'll be like, just does it. Okay. Y'all see how much I think about these things. I'm just like, on to the next pouch. Okay. Oh, Jacqueline says, great gift. I've made a dozen cozy bowls for gifts. Oh, maybe we should do the bowl cozies for a WIP Wednesday. That would be a cool one to do. I need to make more of those, actually. All right, cool, cool, cool. Let me pop over to Facebook real quick. If you have any last second questions, just go ahead and let me know. See if I can get to them before we log off. But remember that I will be on Friday as well at 7 p.m. Eastern time right here. Alice is asking, what is the hardware called? So we call it the pop-out pouch hardware. We have links for it in the chat box, both here on Facebook and on YouTube, in the description box of all the YouTube tutorials that I've done for the different pouches, the regular one, the embroidered one, the tetrahedron one. They all include links in the description box to the pop-out pouch hardware in our online shop. And then you can also just Google. If you type in Crafty Gemini pop-out pouch, it'll pop up, okay? Ooh, Kay says, how would this pouch work for a hand sanitizer carrier? So if you're asking about putting some type of a loop or something to tie it into something, but I mean, the little hand sanitizer bottles, I think absolutely would fit in here. You would just have to play with either installing a little loop, right, on one of the side seams. That would work like we do for kind of like little keychain purses and coin purses and stuff like that. You could do that there, and then attach a ring and put it on a keychain. I would probably do the less stiff one for that if you're going to have it like hooked to something else with your keys, and maybe do the one with the woven fusible interfacing with the fashion fuse, so it just lies a little bit flatter. But the crisp one is the one I did today with the Durafuse, okay? Hi, April. We got a bunch of friends on. Awesome. Let's see. All right. Sandy says she loves immediate gratification projects. That's what I'm all about, girl. I don't have time for the long, long projects. Unless I'm really inspired and I really, really want to do it, then I'll take the time to do it. Okay? So Lainey's asking, do you prefer to mist rather than use the steam on my iron? I do. We live in the country. We got a well with a very hard water, even though we have a water softener, and I just don't have great results with putting my well water in my irons. And these irons are the bomb, my T-fall irons. I have like 5 or 6. We use them for retreats and classes and stuff when we were doing that. And I just find that they like, I haven't had one go bad yet, but for me, I'm not trying to have it all sputtering like dirty water if I use the steam from there with all the hard water like calcification and stuff. So I just over time decided, you know what, it works really well if I just spray water and then add the heat. Same difference, right? With less headache and less irons for me to have to clean out. Okay, I think that's it, y'all. So like I said, actually, let me do a little poll here so I can go back and read these comments. If you crochet, let me know in the comments below. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, let me know if you crochet and if you'd be interested in learning how to make my newest little washcloth pattern, okay? Let me know that in the chat box. We will be putting together little kits for this, and I am finishing up the pajama course that's coming very soon, and then I'll be working on filming this and finishing up the review on this Juki, on the LB5020, so I'll be working on that too. I have a lot of things planned, y'all. My brain is like as usual. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Let us know if you have any comments. You can always reach our customer service team at bea@craftygemini.com in case you can't find the hardware or you can't remember what interfacing, all that kind of stuff. Just feel free to shoot us an email, leave us a comment here, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you again on Friday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.